Bonsai, as you know, is a tree and a pot. But I constantly keep saying, well, I don't believe that's the interpretation. Otherwise, if it was, why are we here? The words should be, in my book, should be artistic plant and pot. Because Egypt is now saying bonsai started in Egypt. India is saying bonsai started in India. Vietnam said no, it started in Vietnam. Even America is saying it started in America. Let's get a grip on reality and just judge what we know. We know very little of the history of bonsai, but we know for the past 3,000 years it originated in China. The reasons why the Egyptians can't lay claim to it is because they were growing palm trees, which doesn't have branches, they only have fronds, maybe in courtyards and in their gardens, but only for food, for the dates. In India, of course, they had the doctors who were going around the whole of India with their herbs and their everything on their donkeys or horses, whatever they had, but again it was for medicinal purposes. Vietnam was still feudal, as was Taiwan, Indonesia, all of them. So we know definitely bonsai originated in China and spread through to Japan as a later period. The Japanese, being very good at imitating everything and doing it better than anybody else, as we know with their cars, of course they did that with bonsai. And they pushed it to the Western world, so today we know it as bonsai from Japan. This actually is from China. Why I brought that up, which I'm sure most of you know, is because there's so many different types of philosophy that's associated with it. A bonsai is just not a tree in a pot, as I said earlier. It's the feeling of a tree in a pot that you want to admire, that you want to be part of. An old tree will get us all in, it'll suck us all in, and why? Because it's a venerable old tree that's maybe hanging on with life. It's lived for many, many years. A few hundred years in our lifetime would be a long, long time, but in the history of trees, it's a very short time. If we can get it to live more than 10 years, we're very happy, aren't we? So we're starting off at a very early age. So with this aim in mind, what our intention is to do to the tree as much as we can to make it gold. You all agree with that? Okay, so going back to the other side of the fence, why, when we get very old trees, do we want to get rid of all those nuts and nubs and holes and fill them in, make it look like a tree that you could buy from a nursery? Don't do it. We go to that word yamadori, which means collected tree. It doesn't mean necessarily collected from the wild, collected from your garden, can be the same, collected from your front yard, or collected from the phone box where it's grown into the ground for the past 10 years, it's still a collected tree. The onus of the word is on collected, not necessarily wild. We have a wild, no it's not, this is probably, the elm here is probably, will be a field-grown elm, but it's still considered yamadori because it's been grown in a field. That's a great material to get hold of if you can, but sometimes you can't. But all through, whatever stage you get to, you've got to go through start to the end. It doesn't matter if it's a small tree, a big tree, an old tree. So it all comes down to the journey. We got some, you grew some, or had some Chinese elms. Did you work from the same tree? The same tree? No, just a different tree. It doesn't matter. Because we had to use it, because if you use other elm trees, you can get variations of leaf. In this case, it doesn't matter, we're only using the roots. They're only in a little tube pot. We stripped all the roots bare, then we drilled a hole, 3 holes, through the trunk of the tree, right from this side, right from underneath, right out the other side. And threaded through these new growth here, and got the roots right up close underneath the base here. So by this time next year, in fact by the time we did rip all the buds off with forcing it through the hole, but it doesn't matter, Chinese elms are still bud back. So the idea, what you've got to do with this, the process has got to be left there for a period of at least a year, let it go really feral, let it go really long and out, and that'll thicken the roots up to here. When the roots are thickened there, where they enter the hole through this side of the tree, they will then start to form new roots on this side. So once that's gone, we will start to have really nice roots developing through here. You can, later on, just see where, on the back of this tree, where we've actually fed the root through from this stage here. So the root will be growing down nicely to match this side of the tree. So there are all sorts of techniques you can do to do that. We could have grafted the root on as well by putting it through the trunk of the tree. That's particularly very good with maples and trident maples, but because the bark on this elm is very thick, it's a little bit more difficult to graft a thin root into a thick bark tree. So we drilled the hole and did what we call a thread graft. There's a very simple thread graft. Any of these trees, even without looking what they are, any of these trees, if you've got an area where you need a branch and it won't grow from a bud, all you have to do is buy a small pot of the same species, and preferably off the same tree, or you could have, this could be a branch from here, you could twist it around and push it through a hole, drill a hole through the tree, pull it out the other side, and you will have a branch exactly where you want it to be. So there's no such thing as a bad tree. I heard a few people say this weekend, oh, all my trees are bad, some of my trees are bad, they haven't got branches where I want them to be. Cheatily. You think the Japanese and Chinese don't cheat? Of course they do. They've been cheating thousands of years, as we know. They're finding out in some of these caves and things, they're discovering all these antiques which was made last year. They've been cheating for hundreds of thousands of years. But it's not cheating, it's helping you to get a little bit more quickly to where you want to be. So don't discourage and say, I need branches there. If you do, buy a plant at the same time, and now, if it's deciduous, early spring, whilst there's no leaves on it, do a thread graft and you have the branches where you want them to be. And any one of these species of trees up here, you can do that quite easily. Although with the pines, I would suggest a slightly different graft on that, which I'll talk about when we get to a pine. Okay, we'll do a coach graft on that, which I'll show you. I'll tell you about that. So what I'm talking about is, we're part of this journey of making this tree into something else. I love a tree as it is. We're now going to take it to the next level, and put it into a slightly bigger pot to let it grow, to get some oomph into it, which will help to thicken these roots. It'll be about 3 years before the roots are actually as thick as we need them to be. The longer you leave these on here, the thicker these will get. And feed. Thanks, Jim.